again. So.
Yeah.
So my first recollection of a thing called race was when they stole our bikes. They thought we wouldn't miss them. I'm tired of hearing we're all wrapped up in money. Whatever I have, I pay for. With allowance, I work for what I get. So, what do you guys think about this statement and your thoughts on it?
I don't know. I find it really interesting that she automatically assumes that there was a specific type of they that stole it instead of just some guy off the street that was just like, hey, it's a bike. I want it, so I'm just going to take it. I kind of find it interesting that, and she also ties it to race because apparently there's also the word race in there. So apparently there was some sort of they of a particular race that took it instead of, like I said, just some guy off the street that was just like, hey, I like this bike. I'm going to steal it.
I was also thinking about just the assumption she was making about those who stole the bike and just in general with the whole working for what she has. Just, assuming that, they are those of another minority or those who stole the bikes necessarily steal and don't pay for what they have. They can steal it, and so she was assuming that because she worked for it, obviously, right? So.
Well, in the part where she says that I'm tired of hearing we're all wrapped up in money, so like implying that she works for what she has, but they just assumed that because she's white and that means that she has advantages and can just be handed another bike that she doesn't. It's not a big deal. She can just go get a new one, but that they have to steal to get anything they want.
It's kind of interesting that she's suggesting that that's how they just normally obtain it. Instead of just saying, hey, I'm short on cash this month. Oh, here's a bike. I can sell this for a lot of money and actually, make ends meet. Instead of that, she's just assuming that that's just what they do on a normal basis. Like there's a bicycle ring that they set up or something where they just go around stealing people's bikes and then selling them on the black market, if that's what you do with bikes.
That's true.
I feel like she's a lot less open-minded.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know what her contact before it was, but she goes from whatever she was to basically saying, this race stole my bike, therefore they all do it, and that's just what they normally do. It's like, no.
Should we move on to the next question?
As far as
So we're doing 5, right?
Yeah, I don't know all of that.
So,
I've never been immersed that much.
I'll read it. Whites are perceived unfairly because everyone sees them as racist all the time. I see a lot of white people trying to struggle not to be, but in turn they end up even worse because they're trying to be extra nice, which a lot of racists don't like. I think they're perceived very unfairly. They are always abused. I don't think you can see them as racist or privileged until you get to know them a little bit.
Every time you and your friends get together, that's how we do.
So the first thing I noticed about this quote was when she says everyone sees them as racist all the time and how generalized that term is, just saying that they've all been grouped into this term as racist.
Which may not be the case. That's generalizing is always a bad idea.
Right.
It's not good.
Which is very similar to how Haitians speak.
I also noticed at the very end,
I can understand a lot what they're saying.
I agree with what she says that
Because the French colonized.
you have to get to know people better before you can actually try to
So proud.
assume how they act or perceive everyone as. Because until you get to know someone better, you're not sure exactly if they really are unfair or racist.
Well, I mean, you can't deny that being white doesn't give you some sort of privilege. And and that isn't the case. I mean, people are gonna give whites a pass for some things. There are some behaviors that whites can do that other minorities aren't able to do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that whites are maliciously doing it. And I do think that that's kind of unfair. I don't know. I think that we would need to get into a discussion of what privileges whites have in a non-confrontational way, saying you're all jerks, you have this, we want it, kind of a thing. Just more like, hey, you have this, it's kind of unfair. Can we come to a consensus of what's more fair for everybody? That doesn't mean that we dislike you or anything like that, or that you're not trying to be fair, because you might be working for your money. You just happen to have a leg up that we perceive isn't fair. Because I think people have a mentality of you're either spoiled or you're dirt poor, and there's a lot of gray area in between.
Yeah, from the reading, that's just, it's better to be poor than to be black.
It's better to be poor and white than to be poor and black.
Yeah, so, I don't know.
I grew up in South Florida and then moved to Wow.
We should try and
people say trying, but there's something.
accomplish.
So you were saying earlier, though, that she was kind of less open-minded, but more open-minded in a way with your brother. Like that example you used. What do you mean by that?
Someone who, what I mean, and this is an extreme example, obviously, but someone who goes from being in the KKK to someone who, is actively nice to minorities, actively fraternizes with them and is friends with them, and, may not necessarily, be view them as equals, but is a lot nicer to them. That goes from obviously someone who is very close-minded to someone who is less. So it's just a question of, you can be less close-minded and then just have some views that are a little bit more open-minded, but you're still kind of close-minded in some ways. That's the thing. Open-mindedness and close-mindedness are a spectrum. It's not either you are or you aren't. So, you can go from being on this end to, a little bit over here, but you're still not over here, kind of a thing. Does that make sense?
Sounds good. Anything else?
Nope.
All right.